similar, tauto means same. You can call it a type of isopathy, but tautopathy has got a specific sphere of action, a specific field of action. And what is the field of action? Tautopathy is the application of a toxin or a drug in its potentized form. Okay? It is the application of a toxin or an allopathic drug. In isopathy you can use literally anything. Okay? But in tautopathy we primarily use an allopathic drug which is potentized or a toxin which is potentized, and it is used to counter the effect of that allopathic drug or the effect of that toxin. So where do we use this system of medicine or a subsystem of medicine? Where do we apply the tautopathic medicines? Tautopathy is basically used when we see patients with lot of drug layers. You see a lot of patients who have taken allopathic medicines for very long, and there is accumulation of a toxic load in those patients. There are layers of drugs that those patients have taken for years. Sometimes we need to drain these patients before the simillimum actually takes hold, or before the simillimum becomes clearly visible. It's not always the case, because nearly every patient that we get has taken allopathic treatment for a very long period. So it's not necessary that you give a tautopathic medicine in all such cases, but there will be such cases in which the simillimum would not be very clear. In such cases, sometimes we need to peel the drug layers before we can actually see the simillimum. So a tautopathic medicine can be used to peel the drug layers. It can be used in cases of drug abuse, addictions and drug overdose. Because in cases of drug abuse and drug addiction and drug overdose, there is always a toxic load. And sometimes the tautopathic application of the same substance helps to drain the body of that toxic load and helps the patient move a bit further towards cure. And another very excellent use of tautopathic drugs is when there is slow toxin accumulation in the body. Like in chronic arsenic poisoning, there are places where groundwater is polluted with arsenic. When there is chronic fluoride poisoning, chronic mercury poisoning, chronic lead poisoning, in such cases, tautopathic application of the same salt can help drain the toxin out of the body. And this has been scientifically proven. This is not just philosophy. There has been a lot of scientific research, both experimental and clinical, in the application of tautopathic medicines in cases of chronic poisoning, and homeopathic medicines have been found to be very, very effective. Very effective. Now, what are the advantages of tautopathic drugs? One advantage is definitely we can use them to counter the side effects of the conventional medicine, the allopathic medicines. And another benefit of the use of tautopathic medicines is that although we can use these drugs without proving, just on the basis of the positive modality, but also they can be proved and assimilated in our materia medica. So arsenic can be used tautopathically, and arsenic amalgam can also be used homeopathically. Apart from that, there are a lot of allopathic cortisonum, the steroid, prepared from the steroid, corticosteroids. It can be used conventionally, tautopathically, and it can also be used on the basis of, consider symptom similarity. Cortisonum has its own symptoms and it can be used on that basis. Penicillinum, it can be used tautopathically, it can also be used on the basis of the proving symptoms. So the medicines have a dual role. Tautopathic medicines, when used just tautopathically, just on the basis of the positive modality, or they can be proved and they can be assimilated in our materia medica for a more confirmatory approach. Because often you will see that even in chronic poisoning cases, you will see symptoms which are related to proving. Because, for example, in mercury proving, you will often see drooling, excessive salivation, which we know is a sign of mercury. It's a proving symptom of mercury also. Because what we do, what was done, what used to be done in early provings, proved substances were given to the provers. When Hahnemann did initial provings, or when Herring proved Surucucu snake, what we call lachesis, what was the proving done? In which quantity the proving was done? The provings were done in physiological quantity. So the symptoms that we today say are proving symptoms, they were produced by a toxic dose. Not a fatal dose, not a lethal dose, but the dose was toxic nevertheless. So the symptoms that would come in a case of chronic poisoning, that they will also be a form of proving symptoms. So if the topopathic medicine has been proved, then it gives a confirmatory picture for that particular poisoning. Alright? Now here a little bit of caution. I have said that we can use these topopathic medicines to remove the drug layers in cases where the patient has taken a lot of allopathic medicines. But we have to remember that we cannot give topopathic medicines blindly in every case where the patient has taken a lot of allopathic medicines. It is not to be done that way, because nearly all the patients that we get today have taken a lot of allopathic treatment. And also, topopathic medicines are not to be given blindly to every patient who has taken allopathic treatment. These medicines are to be applied only when there is a strong correlation between the ingestion of a drug and the symptoms that have come after that. Okay? There has to be a strong correlation between the symptoms that the patient is suffering and the ingestion of the drug, or there has to be a known chronic poisoning case of chronic poisoning. Okay? Only when the two conditions are met can we think of a topopathic medicine. It's not that you potentize the antihypertensive drug that the patient is taking, or the Eltroxin that the patient is taking for a hypothyroidism, and you just potentize it and give to every hypothyroid patient or give in every hypertensive patient. No, that is not the role of a topopathic medicine. There has to be a strong correlation. How the body is reacting, whether there is a reaction or not, and how the body is reacting to that particular agent, that needs to be seen. ठीक है? हर केस में नहीं करना है. Only when we see that the medicine, when the patient says that I took this particular medicine and since then I have not been well. ठीक है? There is a specific rubric, never well since. We have a rubric in repertory, so this becomes a part of that rubric. Never well since that particular allopathic medicine. And in that case, if there is a very clear similimum, you give the similimum first. Don't go for the topopathic medicine. But if the similimum is not very clear, if you are not very sure of the similimum, then probably you can begin with the topopathic medicine. That means you can begin with the potentized form of the very same substance which initially created that problem. Alright, so these are some of the research papers that are available. Most of the research on the topopathic application has been related to arsenic. Arsenic album has been tested in clinically on human beings, on mice, on duckweed, on many other laboratory models. Arsenic toxicity and cases of arsenic toxicity have been produced artificially, and then the beneficial eliminative action of Arsenic alb in various potencies has been documented, and it has been found that in cases of arsenic toxicity, when a patient is given a potentized arsenic oxide or arsenic album, then the eliminative reaction is much more than when a patient is given a placebo. So when you give a potentized drug, it helps eliminate the toxin from the body. How it does, we do not know for sure. The mechanism is not known, but we do know the research has proven that it does. And it has also been shown to counter the effect of many genotoxic chemicals. Chemicals which directly affect our genes, when they are given potentized arsenic album, even in those cases arsenic album has been shown and or other tauropathic substances have been shown to give beneficial protective action. Okay, there have been some studies related to plumbum-met also in chronic lead poisoning, but some cases, the two studies that I was able to find, one was positive and one was negative. But nearly all studies with arsenic alb are positive and in favor of the homeopathic application of arsenic album in cases of chronic toxicity. Alright, so what we are teaching today is not just theory. It is scientifically documented, and there is a solid basis for use of such drugs, albeit you remember what the conditions are. The conditions are that you use these drugs only when there is a clear-cut indication, when there is a clear-cut correlation between the toxin or the allopathic drug and the symptoms that the patient is suffering from, and the second condition is that you are unable to find the right symptom. If the symptom is very clear, because at the end of the day we have to treat what Dr. Hahnemann said, that the symptoms are the language of the body. If the symptoms are demanding a different remedy, then you do not give the tauropathic remedy. If the symptoms are strongly demanding a different remedy, for example, if a patient comes to me with chronic arsenic poisoning or chronic lead poisoning and the symptoms are demanding opium or gelsemium or strychnine or conium, then there is no point that I start my treatment with plumbum-met. But if I am not very sure of the remedy, if this correlation is very strong, we know that there is a toxic load in the body, then sometimes it's wise to start with the tauropathic medicine. It helps the body recover, because the lesser the toxic load in the body, it's easier for body to heal itself. That is what we do with homeopathy, we help the body heal itself. So if the toxic load is less in the body has to fight less to remove the toxic load, then it will respond better to the symptom. Okay? But a true symptom itself has the capacity to do elimination. So if you are very sure of the symptom, no need to go to the tauropathic route. But if you do not know, if you are not very sure of the symptom, if there is a known toxic load in the body, or if your symptom is not working, in that case you can switch to a tauropathic drug. Okay? Tauropathic drugs are not absolutely not similar. They are somewhere close to the ring, because we know that the substance can produce similar symptoms. The symptoms of mercury poisoning are there in brewing of mercury. Symptoms of arsenic poisoning are there in. Okay? So, and where do we differ it from isopathy and tauropathy? Tauropathy is definitely a form of isopathy, but its sphere of action is restricted to allopathic medicine and toxins. Beyond that, if you are using, it falls in the realm of isopathy. Okay? Like if you use the bacteria that is producing a particular drug, if you potentize that bacteria and give to that person, then it becomes isopathy. It's not tauropathy. So tauropathy is a form of isopathy, it is a sub-branch of homeopathy, but its field is restricted to allopathic, bad effects of allopathic medicines or toxins. So these are the basics of tauropathy. These are some of the research papers which you can find at PubMed. Now we will discuss a very interesting case which will show you the value of application of tauropathic drugs. Okay? This case came to my clinic in September 2009. Okay? And this is a very interesting case because this case was a failed case from the allopaths. It was a case, I have titled this case Noddy in my clinic. You know Noddy? We have seen Noddy, cartoon Noddy. What is the basic characteristic of Noddy? Why Noddy is called Noddy?
Continuous nodding of.
Yes. Noddy's head nods uncontrollably. Especially when he is anxious, the head nods very vigorously. And then Noddy has to hold its head to keep it stable. Okay? So Noddy is a cartoon character. I'm not very sure. A British author, Eric Blyton probably created it in somewhere in 1950s and 60s. And the cartoons are very popular. But here my patient was very similar to Noddy in the because its primary complaint was uncontrollable nodding of the head, just like this. Like the patient is sitting in my chair and the head is like going like this, non-stop. There is no voluntary control over the nodding of the head. I mean, the only way to control the nodding was to hold the head. Now could you imagine since how long this patient was continuously nodding his head? It was, when the patient came to me, the age of patient was 35 and the nodding started at the age of 26. So the patient was continuously nodding his head since last 9 years. So a young patient, a young male who started nodding his head at the age of 26, can you believe what his life would be? What his social life would be, what his personal life would be? It's unimaginable. How this complaint started? Well, the patient had no idea how this complaint started, but they could tell me when the complaint started. It started on the day when the patient was getting engaged. When he was sitting on the stage and the whole ceremony of engagement was going on, he started nodding his head. So, but this nodding was not in favor of an agreement of his to-be wife. He just couldn't control it. For no reason, out of the blue, he started nodding his head. So he remembered it very vividly that it was his engagement day. He was sitting on the stage. In India, we sit on the floor and there are ceremonies going on, and suddenly he started nodding his head like this. And then people thought that it's just like something, probably cervical spondylitis or vertigo or something, and it would pass. But it has been 9 years. And it never passed away. In fact, it increased gradually. Now, the family to which this patient belonged is very rich, very influential. And as rich and influential families have, they did not leave any stone unturned to make sure that their sole son gets well. The higher of the family gets well. The family belonged to Jaipur. The biggest names, the biggest neurophysicians in Jaipur treated this male to no avail. The family was so rich that their biggest names, for whom there is a waiting list of 3 to 6 months, used to go to this person's home to treat him. And despite their best efforts, there was no result. The family took their child to the best possible neurophysicians in India. They went to AIIMS, they went to PGI, they went to Gangaram. You can't believe that they went to every possible neurophysician in India, but nobody could diagnose what the problem was and there was no treatment. The patient was given treatment, sleep remedies for sleep, sleep remedy for anxiety, remedies for depression. Nothing helped. Every possible test was done. Every multiple CT scans, MRIs, tumor markers, blood profiles, anything that they could conceive, and absolutely every single test was done. When the patient came with a big file of all the tests, and there was absolutely nothing. EEG, ECG, blood profiles, serum electrolytes, anything that they could think of, even the biggest and the biggest of things that they could think of, they got it tested and nothing came out. So now when nothing comes out, allopaths are at a loss. They cannot treat if they cannot diagnose. That's true. And here they were unable to diagnose. So when they were unable to diagnose, one condition in which there is nodding of head, no nodding of head, is Parkinson's disease. General tremors with shaking of head. It's there in Parkinson's disease. But Parkinson's happens at old age. So when the doctors could not find anything wrong and they could not get the diagnosis, they could not find the treatment, they put that person on remedies, on medicines for Parkinson's. And when I saw the prescription, I was aghast. You are being given remedies for Parkinson's at the age of 35 and you are taking it since last couple of years? On what basis? And again without any respite, without any amelioration. So here was a challenging case. Again, no pathology, no diagnosis, but we do have some symptoms. Not a huge list of symptoms, but there is a characteristic presenting complaint, the continuous nodding of head. How we moved forward in this case? We started taking the history. So the chief complaint was that there was continuous shaking and trembling of head, neck and arms also. It was not just restricted to head, there was shaking in the neck also and there was trembling in the arms also. No other present complaint. There was nothing else wrong with that person at that point of time. When I said anything else, he said nothing, I just have this. So I started taking past history and the patient gave some very interesting past history. When the patient was age 9, he started getting episodes of vomiting. Out of the blue this started. There was no known complaint as such. Again, all the tests were negative and the episodes were very frequent. They would recur every few days. And there was a fixed pattern of vomiting. The vomiting would start at night. Somewhere in the evening at around 7-8 p.m. the child would start to vomit. The vomiting would continue throughout the night and would cease automatically in the morning. Whatever medicine was given for stopping the vomiting, it was not effective. Once the vomiting started at 7-8 p.m. in the evening, the patient would continue to vomit throughout night and the vomiting would cease only in the morning. And this would happen every few days. And the vomiting was basically a bite. So, and then this treatment, this condition automatically disappeared at the age of 15. It started at 9, disappeared at the age of 15. For 6 years, the patient had this complaint. Again, there was no diagnosis why the patient was vomiting, no effect from any medicine, and then spontaneous recovery. Okay? I asked what else? He said that after the vomiting stopped at around the age of 15, since the age of 16 he is having headaches. He is having headaches. And the headaches were very characteristic. Headaches were either in the occiput or in the parietal region, and headaches used to extend down the back. So the pain used to extend down the back. The pain used to be usually on the right side. So the pain would either start on the right parietal region or on the right occiput, and then it would extend downwards into the back. Again, whenever there was headache, there was stiffness in the neck and the back. As I said, that the complaint was primarily on the right side, that it was worse by lying down, it was worse by sitting straight, and the headaches were still there, so it was current complaint also, but it came later on. The patient gave the symptom later on in the consultation process, and the headaches were worse since last 2 years. So he has these headaches continuing since the age of 16 till the age of 35 when the patient came to me. For nearly 20 years this patient was having these headaches, and the headaches were especially worse since last 2 years, and since last 9 years the patient was nodding his head. So this was primarily the case. Another past history that the patient gave was that the patient had nocturnal enuresis till the age of 11, again which is not very common. Alright, till the age of 11 is a significantly big enough age to stop nocturnal enuresis. Other symptoms I started to try to elicit, and all I could find was that the patient was generally irritable. There was anger, but the patient did not express it. गुस्सा आता है पर एक्सप्रेस नहीं करता है, ठीक है, अंदर ही अंदर गुस्सा आता है. This is where the consultation process continued for more than an hour, probably more than an hour. I don't remember the exact time because there were so many cases, reports to go through, so probably I must have spent half an hour just to see the reports, and then the consultation process was also there. But despite all my efforts, I could not find anything else. I could not find any reason for the vomiting. I could not find any reason for the headache. I could not find any reason for the nodding of the head. Without a cause, it becomes difficult. Although we have some good symptoms. We have some good symptoms related to headache. We have some good history in the vomiting. But in both cases, and also in the case of, again, in nodding we don't have any symptom except for the nodding. But in all three cases we have no positive etiology. We don't know what caused it. So in all the three pathologies, all the three conditions that the patient gave, we don't know what caused those pathologies. And the only symptoms that we had was a very vague mental profile, no significant sleep, symptoms related to sleep, no significant symptoms related to dream, no delusion, illusion, hallucination, no fear, no anxiety, no positive modality, nothing very rock solid to prescribe on. We have some symptoms, but what I say in every class, that what you prescribe on should be rock solid. The fundamental, there should be no scope for interpretation. So I was kind of at a loss how to move forward in this case. Should I just repertorize the case, or should I try to find something more? So when I had nothing else to ask the patient and there was nothing else coming, I simply asked the patient, what do you do? Karte kya hua? And the patient said, I have a business. Patients often do not reveal, especially rich and influential people, often do not easily reveal what they do. Okay. So he just told me that he has a business. I pressed forward, what kind of business? And he said that I have got an automotive workshop. I am a dealer of a very big car brand, and we have got a workshop for that car here in Jaipur. And the moment he said that, suddenly alarm bells rang in my head. I just asked him, do you sit there throughout the day? He said, yes. And I said, I immediately said, how could the neurophysicians miss this? I asked him, has ever anyone asked, any doctor asked you, what do you do? He said, no. I said, do you realize this could be significant? He said, no. How? Manika, the petrol fumes, the automotive fumes contain such chemicals, they contain such aldehydes in benzene and lead in significant quantities. They can prove neurotoxic. And trembling is a known symptom of neurotoxicity. If the allopaths were unable to find a pathology, why did not they think of a case of neurotoxicity? We do know that there are a lot of neurotoxins which induce trembling and uncontrolled movements. So, but can petrol or petrol fumes prove neurotoxic? In general, no. Most people are not sensitive enough to petrol fumes that the petrol fumes present in general environment would cause symptoms of neurotoxicity. But here the patient was probably susceptible. If you are susceptible, if you are sensitive, if you are idiosyncratic to that particular allergen or substance, then you overreact. And here this patient was sitting in those exhaust fumes, in those petrol and diesel fumes throughout the day. And it has been going on for years. It has been going on for years. So probably the toxic load was building in the body continuously, and there was a point जिसको हम कहते हैं हिंदी में घड़ा छलक गया. ठीक है? When the water spilled out of the glass. So I told the mother and the son who had come to my clinic that look, this could be a possible cause. And the moment I said this to them, could this be the cause? I said yes. Oh my God, we have also got a petrol pump.
I have seen that patient when I was sitting along with you.
Yes. So the patient said, I have also got a petrol pump. And I asked, where do you live? Just behind the petrol pump. So he was sitting in his office throughout the day surrounded in petrol fumes. And you do know whenever near every petrol pump or the gas pump, which they call in US, there is significant smell of petrol. And his house was just behind his petrol pump. So in the office he was exposed to petrol and exhaust fumes, burnt oil fumes, burnt diesel fumes, and in the home also, when he was home also, he was constantly exposed to petrol fumes. I said this would be the cause. Petrol has a lot, and not just petrol, especially the petrol that gets out of the automotive exhaust. It is more harmful than just the petrol. So, because the burning produces some known aldehydes which are related today with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease also. Now this is a good correlation. It produces certain aldehydes which are known to produce symptoms similar to multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. And here the patient was giving symptoms similar to Parkinson's disease. And another confirmation now comes in. When you expose this, another confirmation comes in. When the patient realized that this could be a problem, this could be the source of problem, he said, you could be right. Whenever I go to my in-laws in Delhi, my trembling, shaking and nodding reduces. confirmatory. Whenever he is not exposed to those fumes, whenever he goes to his in-laws place in Delhi, when the continuous exposure stops, he sees that his trembling and nodding has reduced. So now I was very sure that this could be the cause. So very strong positive modality and not a very strong case otherwise in general. So how do I start this case? I started this case with petroleum 30. Whether this medicine was coming in the repertorization? No. Let's see the repertorization. So I prescribed this patient on 15 September 2009, petroleum 30 liquid solution twice a day for 2 weeks. Alright? And here is the repertorization that I did for this case on the basis of the symptoms of the headache. The rubrics that we took: localization side right, head pain localization side right, head pain localization occiput extending back down, head pain general lying while aggravate, head pain general sitting aggravate, and just to confirm if an old symptom is also covered by the same set of symptoms, I also take a symptom vomiting of bile at night. Stomach vomiting, bile at night, although it was not necessary to take. The remedies that came up were phosphorus, lycopodium, mercurius, belladonna, calcarea, carbovec, china, conium and ignatia. So no petroleum. But I had not much to choose between these remedies. So instead of choosing one of these remedies, I started the treatment with petroleum 30. And this was on 15/9/2009. Since how long this patient was having this nodding of head?
9 years.
9 years. How fast can you think petroleum 30 would help? Could help? How much benefit would the patient get? I prescribed the medicine for 2 weeks. How much improvement can there be in this case in 2 weeks' time? Let's see. First follow-up on 8/10/2009. The patient has 50% reduction in nodding. 50% reduction in nodding. A 9-year-old complaint, once you are able to diagnose it properly, once you are able to find the right remedy, it disappears by 50% in just 2 weeks. So what do I do? In this consultation, when there was significant amelioration, the patient was a bit more forthcoming. I knew this petroleum is not the symptom of this case. Petroleum is tautopathic application of this drug. I know there is chronic poisoning through petrol fumes. So I gave petroleum and the petroleum reduced the symptoms significantly. Here in this particular consultation, the patient says that the trembling usually increases when he has to go in public, when he has to talk to someone, when he has to appear for a discussion somewhere. Now, if you remember, the medicines that were coming: phosphorus, lycopodium, merxol, belladonna, conium, ignatia, carbovec. Alright. Out of these, the 3 medicines that were best covering the symptoms were phosphorus, lycopodium and mercurius. The rest were covering very few symptoms. When the patient said that I have this nodding aggravating while going out for a performance or going out for giving a talk or while going out in public, I said, and there is a very strong right-sided connection, I thought this could be a lycopodium. So, what do? I did a mistake in this case here. Petroleum was very good, giving very good result. I should have just stuck to it. है ना? This is what I have taught you, that when there is a remarkable amelioration, either give placebo or do not change the remedy. That has to be done even in liquid solution. But here, since I was thinking in the line that this petroleum is not the similimum, the patient does not have any symptoms of petroleum, and just giving on the basis of rhabdotic symptoms, I thought it would be better if I start the similimum also. So I reduced the dose of petroleum 30 to OD once a day, and I also started simultaneously liquid solution lycopodium 30 OD. The second follow-up was on 24/10/09, and now the nodding was gone by 75%. 4 weeks, the nodding has reduced by 75%, plus no headaches. What do I do now? Well, I felt that I had made a mistake, so I stopped the lycopodium, because I know petroleum had started the action on the very first time, and the 75% it has gone down. So instead of continuing with the same dose, I just gave a dose of petroleum 200 with placebo for 2 weeks. Alright? Now after this dose, the patient did continue to improve, but the remaining 15-20% trembling, nodding would not go. It was not very visible, but if you knew that this patient has this complaint, you will be able to observe, but a general person would not be able to observe. I came back to petroleum 30, no significant improvement after that. So I moved to lycopodium again, lycopodium 30 liquid solution. Not much amelioration beyond what had already occurred. Then Merxol was also coming in. Merxol, we have night aggravation. Merxol is right-sided. Merxol has a lot of symptoms related to trembling and toxicity. So I moved to Merxol. Again in 30, again in liquid solution, but not with any significant improvement. I mean, there was little bit improvement always, but not significant improvement. So I thought, what do I do? The patient has improved 80%, but now refuses to let go the remaining 10-15% of nodding and slight shaking of head that is remaining. It was not going even with petroleum. So because the petroleum was working when there was significant toxic load, when it was helping to eliminate, but now when the toxic load has reduced, it was not able to undo the damage created, which was done over the period of years. Now we need a remedy that would take care of the rest. Okay. So I re-repertorized the case. Again, I just took the symptoms that I was very sure of, okay, which did not need any interpretation and which were very strong. And the 3 symptoms which were very strong was right-sided localization, the radiation to back, extending to back was characteristic and marked, and amelioration by lying down was significant. Okay? So these 3 symptoms which were either characteristic or very strong, I just repertorized those 3 symptoms, and whatever the remedies coming, phosphorus was again coming number 1. But the patient was very unlike any phosphorus symptoms and was not giving any other phosphorus symptoms. Medicines now that came were phosphorus, sepia, cocculus, natramute, Simonaria, Sinicifuga, Graphitis, Lilium, Degen, Puja. Now I thought about the mental picture of that patient. The patient had anger, irritability, but he never expressed it. Inability to express or inability or to show the emotions is a symptom that we know is associated with natron. Okay? Here we have natron coming at number 4 after phosphorus, sepia and oculus indicus. The patient was not giving any symptoms of phosphorus, sepia or oculus indicus, no other symptom except for these, but the mental profile matched natron, and natron is complementary to petroleum. Natron is also complementary to petroleum. So in the next prescription, that is on 7/5/2010, in the intervening 6 months, I had tried placebo, I had tried petroleum, I had tried lycopodium, I had tried Naloxone. No relief. So on 7/5/2010, I gave Natronamyl 30, just 1 dose. Natronamyl 30, just 1 dose, followed with placebo, and the patient again started. After that, on 10 June 2010, and then on 9th August 2010, I again repeated 1 dose of Natronamyl. With Natronamyl, the patient improved totally. Ashish has seen the case. Now, even if you sit next to that patient, you cannot see any shaking of it. The headaches have never come back, and today there is no shaking of it. The latest consultation, it's not that I've lost touch with this patient. This patient came to me as recently as we stopped the treatment after December 2010. He was on placebo for the last 3-4 months, and when I could sense that he doesn't need any further treatment or he doesn't need further observation, we stopped the treatment. And since then he has maintained good health. There has been no nodding of head, there has been no shaking of head. And the patient came back in April 2010 with symptoms of allergic rhinitis and cold, and he was again prescribed Natronamyl 1 and 1 dose, and he responded very well to that, and since then he has had no complaints. So this was a challenging case of neurotoxicity, and it beautifully shows the role of tautopathic application of drug. Here the patient was not giving any symptoms of petroleum, but there was a toxic load in the body. There was a toxic load in the body, and the petroleum 30 helped get rid of that toxic load, helped eliminate that toxic load, and we saw dramatic clinical improvement in the patient, which is maintained even now when the patient realized that this was a serious problem. They actually also shifted their home. They moved their home from behind the petrol pump to a different distant location. He reduced his working hours also in the workshop. So it all helped in reducing the toxic exposure. The petroleum helped in reducing the toxic load, and the long-term damage that was done because of the toxicity was taken care of by the constitutional remedy that we were able to find later on, Natronamyl, and which we also know is complementary to petroleum. So this is a wonderful case of tautopathic application. I have also used many allopathic medicines tautopathically in certain cases. One of the most common remedies that I have used tautopathically is cortisone. I found this remedy very useful in cases where patient has taken corticosteroids for very long duration. You know that steroids are symptom suppressors. They suppress all the symptoms. So often when the patient has taken steroids for long term, the actual symptoms of the disease or the patient are suppressed, and there is a layer of symptoms produced by the side effects of the steroids. So sometimes to counteract the application of long term steroids in such cases, I have found cortisone very helpful. Another remedies that I have found helpful, there is a medicine called Roaccutane, which is used in acne, and it has known side effects. It produces cheilitis, and again the tautopathic application of the same medicine has been helpful. It has not to be given in all cases, but in certain cases where you know that there is a very strong correlation with the application of the drug, or where there is a very strong drug layer, or where there is a known toxicity, toxic accumulation of the drug or the toxin in the body. In those cases, at times I use tautopathic drugs, and I have found them very helpful in those cases. This case was just an example of such an application. There are nearly all the medicines, allopathic medicines, are now available with homeopathic pharmacies. Dr. Raman Lal Patel of Ahmedabad is the author of the book What is Tautopathy, and his pharmacy also produces a lot of tautopathic drugs. Apart from that, Helios in UK also produces a lot of tautopathic drugs. And if you cannot find it in pharmacy, then you can prepare it in your own clinic. You can just take the medicine, allopathic medicine, potentize it and give to the patient. Okay. So this is also possible. So this is just one more avenue. One more. जिसको अपन कहते हैं ना कि भाई तर्कस में तीर और हैं. In some cases you will need it. In majority of cases respond very well to the Similima, but in certain cases this is one more tool in your kit. So whenever the need arises, you can use it, and it's very helpful considering that nearly all the patients are very drugged. The environmental toxic load is increasing day by day. So there will be a lot of cases, especially the cases which are hypersensitive to specific toxins. In such cases, these drugs, these potentized tautopathic medicines can be very useful for potentize. So this is it from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask.
So if there is a case of skin disease and a medicine is given to the patient, and if he or she develops like allergy towards because of that medicine, can we use tautopathic drugs?
Well, we can use if there are drug side effects. If there is no other Similima, I mean, if there is an allergic rash after the use of allopathic medicine, and the symptoms are very clearly of Rustox, or if the symptoms are very clear of Apis, then I would prefer to give that particular medicine first. If the symptoms are of Asterias or Pyruvase, then I would prefer to give that remedy first before giving the tautopathic remedy. If that doesn't work, or if the symptoms are not very clear, if the symptoms are vague, then probably I would go for the tautopathic application. So it is not the first tool in most cases, it's just a backup tool. Only rarely it would come up as a first tool. Okay.
If symptoms are suppressed because of these allopathic drugs, then we can use
Yes, we can use, but symptoms are suppressed in nearly all cases. There has to be a strong correlation. You should be very confident that this remedy has done this damage. This particular medicine has done this damage. If you are not very sure whether this is because of the drug or because of the progression of the disease, then do not give this drug. And do not give tautopathic drugs just to counter the effects of allopathic medicine in every patient. Especially patients who are on long-term allopathic medicines, be it antihypertensives, hypoglycemics, diabetic patients, or thyroid patients, epileptic patients. If you are not sure of the tautopathic application of that drug, if you are not sure of the side effects, if you are not sure of the positive modality of that particular drug in that particular case, do not prescribe the tautopathic drug blindly. Okay. So that's it for today.